Seen an increase in violence, like economic and social services needed to address some of these issues, because when people can't see a better life, they can't pursue a better life. We can point to a gang culture that starts almost at birth for some kids and is the only life they know. By the time they're 12, their destiny is set, and it's highly likely that it's either prison or death. We also talk about social media, where young people taunt each other, brag about their crimes, and dare others to confront them. We can also point to the national climate where law enforcement is being cast in a negative light, only to further embolden criminals to test the limits of a criminal justice system. In fact, the Department of Justice just released a report this week that shows a 300% increase in attacks against police this year. And we've seen it hit home here in the city of Chicago. On Thanksgiving weekend, we saw multiple instances where offenders engaged Chicago police officers with a gun. And then again overnight, where an offender fired his gun at a district commander. And today, we're thankful that he wasn't injured. But the most pressing issue facing us in Chicago is something you've all heard me say before. Repeat gun offenders are out on the street after serving a fraction of their sentences and driving the violence in some of our communities. Year to date, Chicago police officers have made more arrests for gun-related charges, and along with our gun turn-in programs, have recovered more guns than last year, and yet we've seen an increase in violence. So it's not a problem that CPD can solve alone. Why? Because the people committing these crimes think the consequences for their actions are a joke. Today, I want to point to the poster child for the revolving door of our criminal justice system. Jeremy Terry, a 21-year-old convicted felon from a drug-related charge, had his first gun arrest in February of this year, where he was charged with UUW by a felon. He pled guilty to this charge, and instead of serving his sentence in jail, he was recommended for boot camp. Upon completion of boot camp, which for him lasted 4 months, he was released on parole in August. 3 months later, this past November, on a search warrant mission by CPD, Mr. Terry was arrested yet again with another illegal gun. This is exactly what I've been talking about. When you don't feel the penalties for the crimes you commit, why would you stop committing them? They think our judicial system here in Cook County is a joke. From justice to jail to a joke. That's what they think. This is an individual that was given a minimal amount of accountability every single time he stepped into a courtroom. And I wish I could say this was an isolated incident and that he slipped through the cracks, but the fact of the matter is this happens time and time again on a regular basis. This morning, shots were fired at police officers. One of the individuals involved is a convicted felon with a previous gun charge. Every day, wherever I go, people ask me, how can they help? How can we reduce the violence in Chicago? My answer is, we can't save lives unless we have the tools we need to hold these individuals accountable. I need the public, I need the citizens of Chicago and in the state of Illinois to help us pass the legislation I've been working with the state lawmakers that will give stronger penalties for people that are repeatedly picking up a gun, using them to shoot at people, and then get a slap on the wrist. Because you have to ask yourself, if you are a gang member who liked carrying a handgun in the city of Chicago with the penalties that you know they get, would you stop carrying a gun? I need you all to help us send a message that this isn't okay. It's not all right. It's more than just action on a piece of legislation. It's about life and death. There are real people and families that are paying the price for every day that we don't act. Mr. Terry and our offenders from this morning are part of the problem in Chicago. They aren't one-offs. This happens all the time and time again. Solution is simple. We have to act. I, for one, am sick and tired of seeing lives being lost, and more importantly, I will not stand by and let my officers be put in a position where criminals feel they can attack cops for simply doing their job. I'm asking Chicagoans, I'm asking the state, I'm asking everyone for help. How many more lives do we have to lose or put at risk before we say enough is enough? Anytime you live in a society where an individual stealing a pack of hot dogs, on average, spends more time in jail than a gun offender, there's something wrong with that. And it's not okay. Every week I go into these communities, and every week these people ask me or beg me, Superintendent, do something about this violence. The men and women of CPD have recovered, along with the gun turn-in program, almost 8,000 guns this year. 8,000. Our overall gun arrests are up 8% from what they were in 2015. That tells me, and it should tell you, that the officers out here that swore an oath to protect and serve this city are doing just that. And that's, let me illustrate something for you. That 8,000 gun recoveries is with the documented stops considerably down. So what that's telling us is that those officers are out there stopping the right people for the right reasons at the right times. But the violence is still going up. You know why? Because they just don't feel the repercussions of their actions. Every week we come down here and talk to you all about the violence in Chicago, and one nexus always comes through clearly. Gun offenders get slaps on the wrist in this city, and it has to stop. And I need our judicial partners and our state legislatures to help me close this gap. We've had police officers attacked 3 times this week, being fired at. Just by the grace of God, they're all here to tell the story. That's ridiculous. Coming to work, doing their jobs, and they've been a target. The landscape nationally is ridiculous in terms of the scrutiny that law enforcement is under. I don't know how this narrative got to where it is, that cops are bad guys, but that's just simply not the truth. We're out here trying to do a job. These neighborhoods that are seeing this violence are begging us to do something about it. But CPD can't do it alone. We need help. Questions? Since the election, no. We are always monitoring it, but the answer to that is no.
And then what's the 7 years?
7 years was a conviction for the gun offense.
Okay.
7 years.
He got boot camp.
He did.
Okay. Can you go over that, like the synopsis?
So he got 7 years, but the judge also had an option to give him boot camp. And they gave him boot camp. This guy right here, listen, if I brought his rap sheet down here, it's a page long. Every single time he went to court for anything, he was always given the lightest sentence that you could probably get. So do you think that's a deterrent for him? Clearly it wasn't, because he continued to do the same things. He just doesn't fear the consequences of his actions, because he knows when he goes to court what's going to happen. slap on the wrist. Nope. It's not okay. That stuff is not okay. And any leader in this city that thinks it is shouldn't be a leader.
What about the people arrested on Staten Island night who shot at the defender for anything about their history? Do they have
I know at least one of them does, a repeat gun offender. And that's what I've been preaching. The violence in Chicago, listen, the violence across this country is spiking in most places. And when I talk to my colleagues across the country, all of them say the same thing. These repeat offenders just don't fear the judicial system. So it's not just here in Chicago, but we have to, at some point, say enough is enough. We have to. Otherwise, we're going to keep seeing this cycle of violence.
Secretary, do you think the timing of this makes any difference? And what I mean by that is, with all due respect, we've heard superintendent after superintendent after superintendent make the exact same argument about the gun penalties and the sentences that we hear you saying right now. So this has been years and years and years of this very issue being brought up by superintendents standing in this exact same place. So what makes you think that now may be a better time, or people might be more receptive? Or, I don't know, what's your view on that?
You know what? And now that you put it in that context, that it upsets me even more because the answers to this stuff is as clear as the nose on my face. I know that we've tried to get gun legislation in the past. I'm very optimistic that we will get it done in January. I am really optimistic that we'll get it done. Just in talking to the state legislators, listen, if the other leaders and people responsible for keeping the people in these cities safe could go into these houses that I've been into these neighborhoods, these people are begging me, begging to get something done. I've been talking to the legislators since July, and I'm very optimistic that we'll get something done in January because listen, some things are long-term, some things are short-term, some things are urgent. This is urgent. This is urgent. And I will not stop because I can tell you this. If other people don't think this is urgent and they don't do something to help, I can assure you of this. CPD will not stop. We will keep arresting these people. We'll keep removing these illegal guns off the streets. The climate right now for law enforcement is difficult. It's difficult. But yet, our overall gun arrests are 8% past what they were last year. So that tells you that the police are doing their part. But we need help. We need help. We just simply can't do it. If a gun offender goes into court knowing that he'll only get a slap on the wrist, why would he stop? Would you stop? Honestly, would you? No. When your parents told you not to do something and all they did was yelled at you and there was no consequence, did you stop as a kid? Nope. You kept doing, you pushed it as far as you could until somebody finally stood up and said, this is enough. Well, right now, it's enough. It's enough.
You had bipartisan support. You talking about January, maybe something might happen. Is it going that way?
It's going that way. Yeah. So I am looking for our legislators to do the right thing. This gun violence in Chicago is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You know.
You've been talking about repeat offenders, so what about teens getting access to guns? You know, we saw the grandson of Congressman Danny Davis, but there's two, a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old. What do you have to say to that?
So listen, the easy access to illegal guns in Chicago is ridiculous. I have talked to Zach Farden, the U.S. Attorney, to try to close the gap with that. So we are working on that end too. But in the meantime, I think that if we can get this gun bill passed, which focuses on giving the judges the ability to sentence from the mid to upper range of sentencing laws that's already there. They're already there. We're not creating something new. Just use it. Use it. That's all we're asking. Just use it.
Have you learned by any
For which one? Not yet.
Each one of your fellow officers, given that the 3 incidents have happened this week where they're being fired at, what is the message to not only your rank and file, but obviously the community at this point too?
We're simply not gonna tolerate that. Listen, any loss of life in this city is unacceptable. But if these guys will shoot at a marked squad car, officers in uniform, then what do you think they fear about just other gang members out there doing the same thing? Nothing. Nothing. And I can tell you this, we're not going to tolerate it. We will not tolerate it. We're going to keep coming after you, and we're going to hit you with everything that we have, and we will not stop going to court to make sure the judicial system does its job to hold you accountable for it. We're not going to accept it.
Have you been in direct communication with the judicial system to say, give them that full 7-year sentence, don't give them 3 years?
We have talked to our judicial partners a bit about it. We'll be having more conversation moving forward. But see, the way that the language in the gun bill is designed, we won't have to talk to them. If they want to deviate from the sentencing that's there for them, they'll have to put it down in writing so that it can be public view. Everybody should be accountable for this violence in this city. Everybody. CPD, our judicial partners, and our state legislators, and elected officials in this city. Everybody should be accountable.
Can you talk about just the incident itself that precipitated this whole night, the SWAT response?
Well, so there were shots fired in that area early, but we were conducting a mission over in that general area. And the commander, not going into too many of the details of it, the commander saw these individuals out there, and a shot was fired at that particular commander. He retreated to get help. SWAT was called in. There was a standoff for quite a while. SWAT finally was able to breach after, I think, obtained a search warrant, right? And breached the residence where 5 individuals were arrested and a few handguns were recovered.
Superintendent, I understand legislation can be molded and changed, and, it has to go through the sausage machine to get to where it's going. But ultimately, what is it that you would like to see on the books specifically? Can you break it down to details?
So what I would like to see is pretty simple. If you want to commit a gun crime, carry an illegal gun in Chicago, then you should be held accountable for it. So what I want to see is not boot camp for repeat gun offenders. I want to see them sentenced from the mid to high end of the spectrum so that they get the message that here, we got to change the culture in this city. We have to change the mentality. We have to make it so that gang members don't want to pick up a gun. That's what we're trying to get to. I'm not a fan of mass incarceration or disproportionate arresting of minority people, but I got to tell you this. If you pick up a gun, pull the trigger, and kill somebody, I don't care how you're wrapped, you should go to prison for it. It's as simple as that.
Moving to close that discretion loophole, basically, and ask for more accountability for a judge who decides on boot camp rather than sentencing.
Everybody should be accountable. Everybody. Listen. People are constantly saying they want the police to be accountable. Well, we are accountable. We are changing the way CPD does business. But having said that, everybody else should be accountable too. Everybody. Chicago police officers put their lives on the line every day. This is the one profession. When you get in that squad car at the beginning of your tour, you're telling your partner, I'll give my life for you if I have to. They do this every single day. But we're not the only ones that have a vested interest in reducing this gun violence. The judges do, the legislators do, everybody does. So all I'm asking is for everybody to pick up their piece of the pie and carry it.
Superintendent, I just need to ask you about the overnight shooting of the 73-year-old on North Laramie. Is there anything you can tell us about this man, Ronald Alley? We understand that he was from Naperville, happened to be driving in that area, somebody who had good experience. Is there anything you can tell us?
No, it's still in the preliminary stages of it.